Chimaev, overtraining, something always happening, getting sick, missing fights. He apparently agrees. He has finally responded to some of this, and he apparently agrees. He has left his team, and he has left his home. The article that I read said that he left Saudi Arabia where he was living, but I don't think that's right. I have never heard that he was living in Saudi Arabia. He was living in Abu Dhabi, which is within the United Arab Emirates, which is near Saudi Arabia, and it's a mistake they commonly get, but I'm not really stepping on the guy's toes that wrote this. Maybe I got it wrong, and he was in Saudi Arabia. He was in that part, right? He was in that eastern part. And either way, the point is he left. So he's now at the base of Mount Everett. But the point of that is he's returned home. He is back in Russia. And it's the team, or at least the coach that he grew up with. I believe he left there at 17. Chimaev, the furthest that he went in wrestling was within the junior division in Russia, where he was third. And in Sweden, he had won the nationals 2 different times. But that's also within the junior division, to my understanding. And the only reason I take the time to tell you that is junior division, just kind of loosely, before I go, just think of anybody in high school. Anybody in high school, boom, there's your junior division. And the reason I say that is as far as he went in wrestling, and I'm now hearing that he left them at 17. So that was his base. That was where he started. If he has returned to that team, that's of interest to me. I never love it when a guy changes teams, and it's very common in boxing. But in boxing, it's usually because you have an insecure fighter who cannot accept and own his losses. And that's just the truth. Generally, you have a very insecure, fake tough guy that cannot accept his own losses, so he fires his team and goes and works with somebody else. That is what you see in boxing. Like, boxing isn't quite as dirty and unloyal as you think. It is filthy and it's very unloyal. I'm just sharing for you. It usually comes from an insecurity of a guy, a grown-ass man in the tough guy business that cannot accept his loss. So he fires his team. I don't love to see it with an MMA. And I don't love to see it with an MMA for 2 reasons. 1, I know the importance of team. 2, I know the importance to team to Chimaev, specifically. I know the way loyalty, I know how that works within his mind. And the idea of him changing a team, not to mention, look at where he went. He's completely undefeated. What do you mean change a team? He was the #1 contender. That somehow went away, but he was the #1 contender after he beat a world champion who many call the GOAT, and Kamaru Usman. Like, everything is going just fine for Chimaev. So him leaving a team would generally be something that would give me pause, and I would want to know why. I would also feel very bad for that team, because I know those coaches, man, they take you in like it's like a son. That would be a very hard thing, but I'm hearing that he's returning to the coach that he had before he went to the MMA side. It's very interesting. That story will work out. And I get that there's some hard feelings in there. I'm just sharing. I'm being very selfish right now. I'm just speaking purely about Chimaev and where I think Chimaev can go. And there will be nobody that knows him better than the coach that took him in when he was a little boy and put him in this until he was a young man. There was nobody. It's interesting. I don't know what kind of fighting they are doing at this academy. I don't know enough about it. I'm asking you guys questions. Leave me comments. I read them. I'm doing my own research. I got a message into his manager. If it's just a wrestling gym, we're going to have to revisit this. But if it's a gym that has wrestling and that coach is there and he's doing MMA, I would just like to know what other athletes are there. That's what I would like to know. I'd like to know who his workout partners are. That's what I'd like to know. I'd like to know who specifically are the coaches, not just the head coach. Who's in charge? What have they done in MMA? When's the last time that they saw Chimaev. And I would like to know those things just as a way of trying to look ahead. I do believe Chimaev and Bo Nickal are going to find each other. No matter how apart they might be right now, I do think they're going to find each other. And Chimaev versus Robert Whittaker is a very confusing match. Like history says, and maybe I should even credit Marab from a few days ago, who reminded us that if you are a powerful wrestler with a gas tank, you have superior wrestling and superior cardio, like that recipe has worked since 1993. That's just the truth. That's just a reality. But Robert Whittaker is an exception, much like Maurice Smith was an exception, much like Holly Holm became an exception. Ask Yoel Romero, right? Just ask him how hard it is to tire out Whittaker or to take Whittaker off of his feet. So I'd like to know how he's training. One thing that gets very dull is a guy's wrestling. Like the idea that wrestling isn't enough, that is true, but it's not true to the extent that your lion eyes are telling you. Those great wrestlers, an Olympic medalist wrestler that's in there and he's not out wrestling guys, what you don't understand, he hadn't wrestled in 6 years. He hasn't wrestled in 9 years. He used to be a wrestler. Wrestlers will get away from that. It's the hardest workout you can do. As you get older, you can't do it. You just can't. And that changes about 23, guys. That changes about 24, 25. You can no longer do a college collegiate workout for 2 hours every afternoon. So when you see wrestlers that aren't out there, they're not wrestling, they're not dominating with their wrestling, the part that you're not told is he used to wrestle and his last match was 12 years ago. The part that you don't know that you think his last practice, his last workout in wrestling was 12 years ago. So if you take someone like Chimaev and you return him to that, right? He's one guy that has appeared to never get away from his wrestling. That skill stayed sharp, and he used that skill against Kamaru Usman, who is a national champion himself. But Kamaru didn't keep the skill as sharp. That's also just the truth. So many, when they get into MMA, well, I have that, and that's my base. I have that. I hear people say that. That is as false of a narrative as the last thing to go is your power, or the my footwork and my jab and everything comes behind my jab. Like there's lies within this sport that have lived on. But I have is one of them. Hey, you got jiu-jitsu? Yeah, I have jiu-jitsu. I have no boxing. Oh, yeah. What do you mean you have it? What in the hell do you possibly think that means? You've practiced it? You've practiced it before? Well, did you practice it recently? It's relevant. We have our top guy, our undefeated, one of the bright faces, which is why he's going to main event, who Duplessis himself says the winner of this fight draws into me. Sean Strickland, who's next for Duplessis, co-signs that statement. Says, yes, whoever wins that fight will be fighting the winner of our fight. I mean, this is a massively big deal, and now he has mixed up his training. We've got to figure out, is this for the better or not? And if he's returning to his original youth coach, I argue for you, it's going to be great.